All right, President Obama will call for a 3-year freeze on many domestic spending programs in his State of the Union address tomorrow night. But will it really in the deficit, which the Congressional Budget Office predicts will hit $1.3 trillion? Bloomberg's chief Washington correspondent Peter Cook is at the White House now with the president's budget director. Peter.
Carol, thanks very much. I'm joined by Peter Orszag, who heads the Office of Management and Budget here at the White House. Thank you for the time today. Appreciate it.
Good to be here.
The president's got a lot on his plate tomorrow night in the speech, but the news today is this 3-year budget freeze on discretionary spending for most or many domestic programs. How much of a difference is this going to make?
Well, it will make a difference. It's $250 billion over 10 years, and what we are basically saying is, look, we can invest in key priorities, for example, in education, but cut back on the things that we don't need and achieve an overall freeze, again, not touching entitlements and outside of the security agencies.
This is already drawing complaints up on Capitol Hill. This is going to be too tough, too austere at a time when we're still in recession. We need this federal spending to keep the economy moving. Again, how do you respond to that?
Well, this year our focus is on job creation, but remember the timing here. We're talking about the 2011 budget and then 2012 and 2013. As we go out over time, we do need to make sure that job creation continues, and that means investing in things like education and R&D, but it also means bringing down our deficits so that we don't crowd out private sector activity.
At the same time, you've already got people looking at these numbers and they say, listen, given the budget numbers, CBO today saying $1.3 trillion in this fiscal year, the deficit, $250 billion over 10 years, that is a drop in the bucket. That is not very significant.
Well, it's a start, and it's only one component of what we're going to be putting forward. The full budget will be out on Monday. It's very clear, though, that $250 billion helps, and it's only one part of our overall deficit reduction efforts, again, as you go out over time.
All right, if I'm one of these department heads right now at Interior or Commerce or one of these agencies that could feel the budget axe here, how are you going to pick and choose the winners and losers here?
Well, they already know what their budgets are. This has been a months and months of work, working with, frankly, direction from the president and then working carefully with each agency. Some of them have increases, some of them have reductions, but we've worked cooperatively with them to come up with the total.
And what about, again, the outlook for this? You need congressional help to get this through. We've already heard from some members of Congress, including some from the president's own party, who said they're not going to support this kind of thing. They certainly need more details.
Well, they're going to get full details on Monday when hundreds of pages of budget documents will be transmitted to the Congress.
But do you think there is the political will right now in this environment, again, a recessionary environment, for the Congress to impose this kind of austerity?
Well, again, we're focused on job creation and job growth this year, but as you go out over time, we can't afford to continue to spend money on things that don't work well or don't reflect our priorities, and that's all we're saying.
To what extent is this action today, this announcement from the president, what we'll hear in the State of the Union, a message not only to a domestic audience that worries about spending run amok, but also an international audience, those international governments who are financing our debt right now and worried about it?
Well, the president has been very clear from the first day he took office that we face two deficits, the jobs deficit and also the budget deficit. And so you're hearing us speak about both priorities because, frankly, they're both issues and we need to be addressing both of them, not only for domestic investors, but for foreign investors too, sure.
The political climate here, we had the Republican Party Chairman Michael Steele said this is like going on a diet after winning a pie-eating contest.
Well, look, there are misleading analogies that can be thrown around. I think the fact of the matter is it saves $250 billion over 10 years. It is a constraint. You would not be hearing the howls from Capitol Hill and from some others concerned if it didn't impose constraint. It does. But again, not in a blunt way, not in a hatchet way. We are saying some things will go up, other things will go down, but we think that we can live within a total constraint in which spending as a whole for these agencies is frozen.
All right, this is the discretionary part of the budget. Of course, we've got entitlement programs.
Yes, we
had an effort today in the Senate. Senator Gregg, Senator Conrad, both together, backed by this president, pushing for a commission, a bipartisan commission to try and confront these issues. It failed today in the U.S. Senate. What's the next step for the president? Is he going to move on an executive order to make this happen?
I think we will still have a bipartisan process. We will still have a commission. There are different ways of creating that commission. The important thing is that both parties come together and address this out-year deficit problem, which is going to require a bipartisan effort.
Is there a way to force Congress to vote up and down on this? Because this has been the criticism of an executive order, is that it doesn't have the same sort of clout that an act of Congress does.
I think you can get most of the way there, but again, the important thing is not what happens when the commission issues the recommendation. It's getting the commission to issue the recommendation in the first place, because that will reflect a bipartisan agreement among, for example, the commission members on what to do. And that's what our focus needs to be.
You've been up on the Hill. You headed as CBO. This president, this administration does not believe the regular order in Congress, lawmakers getting together, can solve this problem on their own with the regular process?
No, what we're saying is there needs to be a bipartisan process to get this done, whether it's done through regular order or through some other congressional procedure. The key thing is both parties do need to come together, and that is what we need to see happen over the next year.
Let me ask you about health care, because you've been right at the forefront of the health care debate, looking at the numbers, crunching the numbers, trying to bend that cost curve. We're not sure where the health care debate's going to go. Of course, we want to hear from the president on Wednesday night, but is your own budget that we're going to see on Monday going to reflect a budget that includes a health care deal?
Well, you'll hear from the president tomorrow night. You'll see what comes out on Monday. What I would say is we need to get health care reform done, not only to help workers, for example, who are switching jobs so that they don't have to worry about getting new coverage or pre-existing conditions, but also to bring down the deficit over time. Healthcare costs are the key to our long-term fiscal future, and unless we put in place the kind of infrastructure created by these bills, we will not be able to tackle our very long-term budget deficits.
Is there any other move that we'll hear from the president? You talked about, again, many components here tackling this issue. Are there that many other levers for this president to pull at this moment in time with regard to the budget and the deficit situation, which, again, we heard Senator Gregg, Senator Conrad, others on the floor talk about this unsustainable path?
Well, we are on an unsustainable path, and I would say tune in tomorrow night, and you'll hear the President of the United States talk about it.
All right. And again, in terms of these discretionary spending, what's off limits to this president? Defense spending, there are some on the Hill already saying, listen, defense has to bear some of this pain as well.
Well, and don't forget that with it, we are at war, and we need to make sure we're adequately funding our troops, and I think everyone agrees on that. But we are achieving efficiencies in the defense budget. If you look back over the past year, no one thought that we would succeed in canceling the F-22, for example. We did that. There are going to be additional efficiencies that are possible, especially, for example, in the procurement part of the defense budget. But while our troops are in harm's way, we need to make sure that we're adequately funding them, period.
Let me just ask you one final question about this and about this whole budget process. Is this a unified White House, a unified economic team on this? Because we've heard at least some suggestion that maybe not everyone was on board with this decision.
No, I don't. I think we are unified. We, again, face two deficits, the jobs deficit and the budget deficit, and we are all in the same place that we need to be addressing both of them, and that's a difficult thing to do, but it's absolutely necessary.
All right. He's Peter Orszag. He's the head of the Office of Management and Budget for President Obama. Thank you for the time.
Thanks.
Obviously, we have to tune in tomorrow night for a few more details on the president's efforts to try and rein in the budget deficit. That's the latest from here at the White House.
All right. Thank you so much. Our Peter Cook there down in front of the White House.